Hello, everyone. The rest of our panel here.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Carlos, are you there?
Hey.
All right. Very happy to have everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good. Very happy to have everyone here. We are here on behalf of the Film Experience, and we'll be talking about the Emmy Awards. I'm Abe Friedtanzer. I'm in Los Angeles, California. Carlos, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. This is the whole internet thing, but yeah, I am Carlos. Hi, I am from the Philippines. What a great way to introduce myself.
Hi there, I'm Chris James and I'm in Los Angeles.
Hello, I'm Claudio Alves. I'm from Portugal.
I'm very happy you're all joining me today. It's great to be able to write for the Film Experience, and we've all had the pleasure of covering a number of different categories in preparation for this Sunday's ceremony, and of course, Claudio, especially for a lot of the technical awards that are going to be presented this week for the Creative Arts Emmys. And so before we start talking about the Emmys, I just wanted to ask, when did you first start reading the Film Experience?
Should I go?
Sure.
Let me begin. Well, I started, I think, 2008 or 2009. I don't remember being in the online film world without knowing about the Film Experience, because it's one of my gateways to the Oscars in 2008, 2009. Because before I thought, oh, the Oscars are just the best in the world. I didn't realize there was a race. I didn't realize there were so many factors coming into play, and the Film Experience is one of the formative websites around that time period, 2008, 2009.
Great.
Wonderful. I'm basically going to copy your answer, Carlos. I started, I remember in the 2009 season, because I remember a lot of mean things being said about The Lovely Bones, and rightly so. But I remember, you know, I had always read up on the Oscar races through like Entertainment Weekly's like print media, Wild Time from the befores. And the Film Experience was really my internet gateway into delving more and kind of finding other pockets of the internet that were as awards possessed as I was. And I also loved the Swank versus the Benning. That was when I was sealed to the Film Experience.
For me, really, the point in which I started to get interested in the Oscar race also coincides to when I found the Film Experience. It was in the 2006-2007 race, and it was mostly through the Best Costume Design category and Marie Antoinette, which I was very interested in at the time. And I started following it then, and then just continued. I think the first season, I really tried to watch every film was the 2008, 2009. And from then on, I've just been an obsessive.
I mean, for me, actually, I think it was back in 2002, because I remember still seeing some of the Oscar stuff from 2001, which was when I think I was really getting into movies and also into TV. And so I remember reading, because 2002 was not such a crazy year, but then 2003 was a really, like, there were a lot of surprises during the nominations, which I read about all at the Film Experience. And then, of course, it was the most boring ceremony with no surprises at all in the winners, after like Keisha Castle Hughes and Samantha Morton, all these big breakthroughs that we didn't think were going to happen. So for me, it's been since 2002. What is your earliest memory of the Emmy Awards?
2017. I was late in the game. I mean, before the Emmys, I think the only thing I've watched was Feud because I'm coming from film and I was like the snub, like I don't watch TV. But and then Feud happened, Betty and Joan, and then I watched it because it's the Oscars again. But I watched that and Big Little Lies and Veep. So those are I think the only three shows that I watched coming into the Emmys, and it felt very different watching the Emmys compared to watching the Oscars. And then I did catching up, and then one of the first shows that I saw after the Emmys is The Handmaid's Tale, and that shocked me to my core. And now I'm a fan of the Emmys because of this thing.
Wonderful. I've been watching the Emmys since like the early 2000s. Just kind of, the Oscars radicalized me when I was like 6 and I saw Celine Dion clutch the heart of the ocean and sing Titanic. And the Emmys, I was just like, oh, there's another show where people dress up in fancy gowns and go get awards and sometimes cry. Absolutely, I'm there. But I don't remember what the first specific telecast memory was, but I do just remember how for however many years it was always Deborah Messing, Patricia Heaton, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Jane Kaczmarek. And I just vividly remember Jane Kaczmarek being like, yeah, every one of these other women trades winning the award and I never get it. And for some reason, that's my first Emmy memory.
My first Emmy memory is a bit tied with disappointment, sort of. I only really got into the Emmys around 2010, which was when I discovered Mad Men on its 4th season. And I just loved it so much. And I thought the 4th season was the best season yet. It had the suitcase, for example, which is a brilliant episode. And I remember, because I was so excited about this show, I started following the TV awards race. At the time, I was already interested in the Oscars. So like you, oh, another show of these that I can obsess over. And I remember following it and being very disappointed because that year Mad Men only won Best Hairstyling and Best Drama Series. And I remember watching the Emmys, it was the first year I watched, and being so crestfallen, oh, it's going to lose. It's going to lose for its best season, and then it won. So it's a bit of a mixed feeling of disappointment and elation at the very end.
That's fair. For me, I had to double check. I had a memory and I wanted to make sure it was real. So I went to YouTube to find a clip, and it's Jay Leno presenting when Friends won Best Comedy Series in 2002. And he actually says, like, you can see through the envelope. And then he shows him Friends. And so that was very formative for me, because that was like the year I was really getting into TV, and a lot of shows that I actually wasn't watching then, but I'm now very into, like The Shield and 6 Feet Under, 24. Like that was 2001, 2002 was a really, really big year in a way that I think the next couple of years weren't. But I think I started predicting the Emmys maybe a couple of years after that. And then when I started my own, TV website in 2007, I was looking at all the finalists, like the top 10s and top 15s for each category, which I wish still existed. And I think at least since 2010, I've been watching all of the submitted episodes from each of the performers, which has always been one of my, I think I might be unusual. I'm obviously looking forward to Sunday, but for me, the race is most exciting when they're all the contenders, and then like a little less exciting when the nominees come out, unless there like are some great surprises. And then in terms of the winners, it's like at that point, unless something's going to happen like a Tatiana Maslany or Rami Malek or just something really, really, or Jodie Comer last year, I think that my excitement tends to go towards more of the nominations, in part because there are so many nominees. I know some people don't like that, but we also saw some commenters on the Film Experience talking about how there should be 4 different acting categories, where one is guest, one is recurring, one is supporting, and one is lead. And I know that one of my big issues this year is Steve Carell was fantastic on The Morning Show, but he's not a lead actor. He's a supporting actor, I firmly believe. And similarly, Sterling K. Brown, very good on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but he's not really a supporting actor. He's in 4 episodes out of 10, and he just, that's strange to me. But I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts about if there are either too many or too few categories that we'd like to see more of them.
Yeah, I would almost say that I enjoyed how they did it this year. That it was sort of based on the number of submissions. It at least like put some guardrails, because I think I've always been annoyed at the Emmys of like sometimes you'll make room for 7, sometimes it's just like 6 or 5. Like make up your mind. But I think with that 8 in supporting categories where I feel like you have just so many different people to choose from, that they didn't just kind of, there's less egregious category fraud where people are putting themselves in supporting when they're actually lead. And you kind of saw both diversity, but also like a diversity of people's roles and sizes of roles within that.
Right. I mean, it does drive me crazy though, as someone who likes statistics and like could remember like Oscar nominees, even with the like fluctuating Best Picture. I feel like I can remember those, but there's no way you could actually memorize or really just reference in your mind how many nominees. And this, I mean, it's just going to get worse. But I guess it does. It does. You know, quality is better than consistency of statistics, I would say. We have a question from one of our film experience readers, Ryan T, which is what performances and or shows that didn't get nominated do you wish had this year?
Obviously, from my background, I am so sore that Elizabeth Moss missed in actress, as Yvonne Strahovski, Anne Dowd, Julie Dretz in Oti Fagbenli, Mayday in directing and writing. I've commented this in your post and drama series, and I'm going to reiterate that. But, I mean, this is a whole thing now, but from a recent discovery, I would say Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist in comedy. I love that show. Love that show. Everything's great. And every episode, it's just on point and top notch. And when you get something like the Kaminsky method, it's just, it ruins the mood of like greatness.
The Kaminsky method really does ruin everything. Yeah, so my big quarantine binge, I mean, it's not that big of a binge, it's only 4 seasons long, but I got fiercely addicted to The Good Fight. The best show on TV that nobody watches because who in the world wants to pay for CBS All Access, but it's great. And I would have loved to see it get in for series, but also like the cast is stellar. Christine Baranski, Delroy Lindo, Audra McDonald, Kush Jumbo, Nyambi, like the list just goes on. I think I could have, I love Succession, but I could have given just as many acting nominees to the cast of The Good Fight that Succession got. So that's a big one. But like on the comedy front, I loved High Fidelity. I love Dickinson. Everything's Gonna Be Okay. All of those. I even loved High School Musical, the musical, the series. That was a wonderful surprise that I didn't think I would be talking about in an Emmys conversation, but Disney really did it well there. And I know Poe's got Billy Porter, and I think it should have gotten drama series. I think season 2 is much better than season 1. And I also think Angelica Ross was the absolute standout of the show. And I don't, if you were watching Pose and nominating Pose, I don't know how you don't go for her.
As far as shows are concerned, I agree with the love for The Good Fight. I'd also like to have seen some recognition for it. But I also thought of some performances that I would have loved to have seen recognized. You talked about Sterling K. Brown in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and when I watched the series after the nominations were already announced, I remember being very puzzled why he got the nomination and not someone like Leroy McClain, which I thought was much better in the show and had a much more interesting challenge in terms of vacillating tones. On the drama front, I was disappointed that Josh O'Connor couldn't get in for The Crown. I am a very anti-monarchist person, so that someone made me care about Prince Charles is very, very impressive. And in regards to miniseries and TV movies, the entire supporting cast of Mrs. America is extraordinary, but I was really rooting for Ari Graynor. That debate episode, she's fantastic. I think it's my favorite single episode performance that I've seen on TV all year long. So yeah, I knew she wasn't going to get nominated, but I was still rooting for her.
I agree with a lot of what you guys have said. I actually I'm preparing my own ballots for my awards that I hand out. That's the part I should put in quotes. But I think Pose. I mean, I absolutely MJ Rodriguez and India Moore, and I think I don't understand why in a year with so much diversity and really recognizing. I don't know why because that to me, that is a world I know nothing about. And I'm just so mesmerized by it all the time. And the fact that it got in last year, when I first got in, I was like, I don't want to watch the show. And then I watched it and I was like, whoa. And season 2 was even, again, I do think was even better. I also, Ari Grainer, Mrs. America was great. I also thought Elizabeth Banks was terrific. That was one of the more powerful episodes to me, looking at a conservative feminist. The limited series Our Boys from HBO, which I had hoped, but I knew it wouldn't, but I had hoped that with another somewhat Israeli series, Unorthodox, might be able to also get some recognition. Esther Smith in Trying, which is a really wonderful show on Apple TV+. And The Great is my favorite comedy of the year. And I actually think the pilot was the weakest part of it. And so the fact that that's nominated for directing and writing is disappointing because the show after that, I mean, part of it also is Nicholas Holt's in the wrong category. He really is a lead actor, and him being supporting doesn't make any sense. But it's sort of how I couldn't understand how Tatiana Maslany could ever be nominated for Orphan Black and not automatically win. That somebody would watch it and then say, like, yes, she's nominated, but somebody else is better. And so that was just astounding to me. And I would echo Tobias Menzies was just as good as Josh O'Connor for me in The Crown. And I'm sad that he couldn't be part of it. And the other show that I would not have expected, but when I was going through, my ballots, I realized I was citing a lot is Perpetual Grace Limited, which was on Epix, and which actually was renewed for like a limited additional run, but the creator said we're never going to do it like this. And so that's one that had some really incredible performances, and just I think it maybe needed some more time to develop as a show, but I still think that I'm very very blown away by it. I see that we have a comment, which isn't necessarily a question, but I want to get our thoughts on it, about Saturday Night Live actors in the supporting comedy categories. What is I don't know if anyone of you I don't watch Saturday Night Live regularly. I watch it every year just for the Emmys, but what are some thoughts on this?
Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I'm normally, I don't want to say I'm against it always, because I think that there are incredible performers on Saturday Night Live. I think if there's any sort of additional categories to add to the zillion that already exist, I don't know why you wouldn't have performer in a variety series.
They used to have it. I don't know why they don't have it anymore.
Because I think there's also just like Saturday Night Live always gets its 1 or 2 slots in supporting actor races, but I think we've seen a lot of really other great variety sketch shows. Black Lady Sketch Show, for example, this year I thought was really strong, and I was happy that Angela Bassett got a guest actors nomination for 2 seconds of glorious screen time, but still very glorious. But it's a different skill, and I think it's harder to stack up, but also, and maybe this is just my bias showing, because I also only watch Saturday Night Live when like the internet tells me I must, or the Emmys do, and when the Emmys do, I don't think they often submit well, or they just submit whenever they do a vaguely political sketch. But it just never quite measures up to me with even some of the weaker narrative performances, and I think it's just because I can connect to a performer if I already know them and love them, and it's a little harder to do that when you're breaking out.
I would second what you said about. I would second what you said about different skill sets, because it's a very different type of performance, especially when it's a live performance, like on Saturday Night Live. And I think they should go back to having a specific category to honor those types of performance, because it feels a bit unfair, even to the Saturday Night Live actors that are nominated. It seems unfair that they are competing with people that are doing such wildly different work, and the standards to evaluate their proficiency are so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have watched Saturday Night. I also got that Saturday Night Live in its entirety since the 2016 election season. I started watching it in full. Even though it's bad, it's already a habit. I can't quit it. For some reason, I had to train myself to 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 judge. It's vastly different, but I had to train myself to judge a live performance that responds to the audience, and it's okay to look at the cue cards to a performance that must look as natural as possible. It's again different skill set, different environment, but they combine them, so we adjust.
And I mean, I will say I do think that I do like the idea of more categories. It is a very strange thing every year watching the like election and coronavirus themed episodes so much later, especially because I think it was the last one of the episodes that was submitted this year is the last episode that was filmed live with no real knowledge that they weren't going to be able to do that, and they were it was Daniel Craig hosting, and they were like making all these
Yes.
jokes about not touching and other things, and it's like it's just funny watching it later on because it's called Saturday Night Live. Even if you don't watch it right away, you're supposed to watch it that week. And so when I'm watching episodes from February and March in August, it's always a humorous thing each year, especially with anything political. And we're like, oh, now Trump finally did something, he won't get elected. It's like, okay, sure, that's fine. On the note of a category that maybe has become diminished in years, TV movies. I think this was a year where at least some of us I thought Bad Education was going to do a lot better than it did. I know that after last year, there being no acting nominees from any TV movies, this year seemed like it would be more, but then of course we ended up with just Hugh Jackman and Titus Burgess, which of course is its own separate thing since that's an interactive special, and I don't even know how to consider that one, but I did enjoy it, especially with things like distinctions that Netflix has 4 of the TV movies nominated, but one of them is a TV show. One of them is an episode of Dolly Parton's Heartstrings, which is a TV show. And then there have other things like The Irishman, Marriage Story, and now all these other things that aren't even coming to theaters that are considered for the Oscars. Is the TV movie dead, or just not something that should be part of the Emmys, or do we want to see a resurgence of this in the future? Right, Chris?
I think it's almost like the TV movie is a bad word. Like I think when I think of a TV movie, I think of Miss Dolly Parton's Heartstrings. No offense, but a little bit of offense. And I think with the Oscars now opening up for movies that premiered on streaming, albeit for reasons that I think we all can tell because we're all on Zoom and have to be for the rest of who knows when. I just think like the windows are collapsing, and the line really should be the Oscars honors movies and the Emmys honor TV. Like I would love to see Bad Education be something that gets considered for Oscars rather than Emmys, and I think people discount it a little bit because they forgot that it qualified, because I think the average person can't really draw a line between this is something that was on streaming or this was something that was supposed to go to movies and now will go
Yeah.
to the Oscars.
As someone who wrote about that category, it's weird because, like, for example, El Camino and Kimmy Schmidt were actually like continuations of existing series, and then you have Bad Education that is maybe initially planned to be a theatrical run, but it was bought by HBO. And then you have something like American So, which is a television event. I don't know what that means. And then These Old Bones, which is I think before Black Mirror shifted to drama, it's like the standalone installment. So I don't know. I think it's how we're making films now, because I think before the even in a financial side, what is being given for a TV movie is so different from what is being given to a theatrical film. And in some ways, that's where the bad rep of the TV movie is coming from, because you kind of see, but with the rise of independent films, with the rise of like acquisitions that are being bought by streaming, and then streaming, which is like a whole thing, which is in Netflix, the only thing that separates their Emmy contenders from the Oscar contenders is a limited LA run. So for us who are, well, us, Chris, because you're in LA, for people who are not watching it in the theater, we have no idea what's the difference. And we just have to look at the Oscars eligibility list. And even in documentary, we see a lot of Venn diagram overlap with documentaries. So I actually don't know how to resolve that. I just rambled.
I do think that what separates a TV movie from a cinema movie, if you want to call it that, is a very porous membrane that's starting to become more and more difficult to discern as the years go by, and this entire crisis isn't helping. Even in terms of the formal language, I think if you look at TV movies from the early 2000s, you can see that they were filmed with the purpose of being watched on a small screen. So there's a lot of medium shots and close-ups. The visual language is a bit different than for something that would have been made for a big screen. But nowadays, it's also changing. You really don't see that difference anymore. Even, and for example, you mentioned Bad Education. That film was created to be watched on a big screen. It was at the at Sundance, and some years ago, I remember Behind the Candelabra, because that film in the US it went straight to HBO, but in Portugal it went to the cinemas. It was theatrically released.
And it got BAFTA nominations for film too.
Yeah, so for Europe that was just a normal film. There was nothing TV about it, and I do think those distinctions are becoming maybe superfluous or useless as both mediums continue to change and evolve. And I think that maybe in 10 years, the TV movie category will become nonsensical to still exist. Maybe I'm wrong, but at least when you look at the trends and how these art forms have been evolving, I think the TV movie as an awards category is probably destined to disappear.
Yeah, I just want to add to that because with the formal aspects, because before, like I said, it's easier to discern, and with my mom, we watch everything. Sometimes she would say, maybe she can hear me right now, but she would say something like, for when we watch a film, it's like a TV movie, and then when we watch an episode of TV, it's like a film. So formally speaking, it doesn't, the delineation doesn't exist anymore. But it's just now it's just a matter of technicality, like who gets to have a LA run for 7 days, who gets to be picked up by HBO. That's the only demarcation now of what's a TV film and what's a film.
And not to be like shady to the Emmys, but like who is tuning into the show now that American Son has a nomination, or that, like, I guess I don't know, even just from like an excitement standpoint, like what TV movie brings for you having it, especially if you're not nominated in other categories.
Right, that is fair. I think that also it's really not, especially this year, that a lot of those they're barely represented anywhere else. American Son, I would say, it's possible it brings a theater group, simply because it's also something I watched not knowing it was a play, and I was like, was this a play? And of course it was, because that's exactly how it's staged. For me, I have a movie website and a TV website, and so I am sometimes troubled to figure out which one I should write a review of something for, especially in some cases there are movies I see at Sundance that then end up becoming TV movies, like Troop Zero, or there was another movie a few years ago when that I saw with Saoirse Ronan, and it ended up being acquired later, became a Lifetime movie, which is like a whole different level of TV movie. But even though Lifetime actually does pretty well in that category historically, but I think I'm also now reviewing documentaries and writing about them on my movie site, even though they're premiering on Showtime or on Netflix or something else. I don't know that it's something that needs to be there. I like the idea of things getting recognition, and I'm happy to see projects that might end up with, I was happy to see Sella and the Spades as a contender, and again, Trip Zero, but then when you end up with this sort of normative expected set of nominees, that's a bit of a disappointment. It baffles my mind that movies can win Oscars and Emmys, all these documentaries, that the lists are almost the same way that when people talking about Hamilton, and that's going to win Oscars. And then I read that it's actually makes more sense that it could win an Emmy for direction or for editing rather, because it is a production that's been turned into something else. But otherwise, you could just film anything and then say that anything would be eligible, and that you get down to a slippery slope. Which, if ultimately the idea is to reward a more diverse crop of television, if there are already other ceremonies that exist and other groups that can honor them, to me, I think that's sufficient. I do want us to take us on a new direction by mentioning a TV movie, which is El Camino, because I know, not to talk about El Camino at all, because I have nothing to say about that, but Better Call Saul. I know that Andrew Carden had asked, will Better Call Saul ever win an Emmy? And I don't know if you guys are fans. I know I'm a big fan of it. And I do absolutely think that the three main actors who were snubbed this year, that really is, it's a bit of a blow, given that I think season 5 may have been the best season yet, or at least as good as the other ones. And I just didn't see it. It was like Richard Madden from Bodyguard last year. Like, you just didn't see it coming. And Elizabeth Moss this year too, especially for you, Carlos, that like, it's why who could watch Better Call Saul and say, yes, it's one of the best shows of the year, but none of the so will Better Call Saul ever win? What do we think about this?
As someone who has binged the 5 seasons this August, because I found that it's my biggest blind spot, and there's no Game of Thrones, and I haven't seen Game of Thrones, so let's go with Better Call Saul, even though I haven't watched Breaking Bad. I can see it in the final season getting actor. Maybe supporting actor. I don't see supporting actors. I know Rhea Seehorn fans are like, yay, but I don't think I would 5 seasons in, I don't think it's the kind of character that would win supporting actress, because they really like the big crying, unless she has that in the season 6. Writing, it's always comes close to writing, and it never does. I think season 3 with Chicanery. I mean, when you binge something, episodes get blurry. You just see it as one chunk of TV. But Chicanery has stuck with me as an excellent piece of writing, but it just had a misfortune of competing with my baby, The Handmaid's Tale. So. No.
Yeah, I hate to be the pessimist, and I will caveat by saying unfortunately I should watch Better Call Saul. I know I should. I watched all of Breaking Bad. I loved Breaking Bad, and it's just not. I haven't pulled the trigger on the binge yet. I'm excited to hear, Carlos, that it's gone so well for you and that you've enjoyed it. But I do watch whenever episodes they submit, and Chicanery was really, really great. But are they actually? I think like this is something we used to see with Emmys a lot. These sort of shows that continue to get nominated, but I would question whether they're actually watching it. I think what you're talking about, where these people were fantastic and they didn't get nominated, I think it's a name check for a certain amount of people who were hardcore Breaking Bad fans who are like, oh yeah, I like that show. I remember that show. I'll watch it later, and then never get around to it. Or it's name recognition. I voted for it last year. And there were just a lot more exciting shows with bigger casts that I guess that they were watching more closely, like Succession, that kind of bumped some people who, like Bob Odenkirk, who are normally there out.
Yeah, I just want to add that we watched Better Call Saul 5 seasons within 8 days. It's such an easy watch, and it's so character driven. And we didn't even know who Gus Fring is, but when he entered, like, oh my gosh, I just spoiled it.
No,
anyway,
he's nominated.
He's been nominated at the Emmy, so you know he's gonna come in. He's gonna come in at some point. Yeah,
I watched his episodes.
But I think I can also see why it's not winning, is because
Okay, what were you saying?
Yeah, hello.
Oh, yeah,
I just want to say that the internet connection is so stable. That Better Call Saul is the kind of show that is stylized, but it's also very restrained. And I don't think that's the kind of show that's gonna win Emmys, because, for example, Game of Thrones was nominated it with the big scenes, and the only time it didn't win there was The Handmaid's Tale, which is like a cinematic. Oh, there we go again, cinema versus TV. So Better Call Saul is just so restrained, and I don't think it's gonna win series. I mean, especially with Ozark dividing its 2 seasons for the finale, it's tough.
I'm also a bit of a pessimist. I think it might win writing for its last season, but I don't really see it winning anything else. I also believe some of that best drama series nomination comes again from people loving Breaking Bad and the residual love for that. But the fact that so few of the actors were able to, well, Giancarlo Esposito only this year. God, and I think it's a show that still lives in the shadow of its predecessor, and I doubt it's ever going to win big. Maybe writing, because I think, like you said, watching the submissions every year, I think the writing stands out. So maybe that will finally get them in. But big like drama series, I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry to its fans.
Right. And I do think that's true about the writing, because I remember last year that I was annoyed that the Janet's episode of The Good Place got nominated for writing, but not the actress who portrayed her. And this year, 2 unbelievable submissions are nominated for writing, but the actors in them aren't. And it's just strange to me. I know we have there are different things that go into it, but it's still just unfortunate to me. I am somebody who, I like Breaking Bad a lot. I don't put it on the same pedestal as most, but to me, Better Call Saul is strongest when it diverges from there. I didn't love the pilot because I thought it was too much trying to be Breaking Bad, but as soon as they got away from that, I thought it got better. And I'm actually impressed that, without really spoiling anything, this past season brought us closer to the narrative of Breaking Bad without becoming that show. And I thought that that was really strong. It does surprise me that you binged it so quickly, because I do think it's one of the slower shows I watch. I don't mind that, but it's the same thing as when I hear people binge Mad Men. I just don't understand it. Mad Men is like, it's a good ordeal, but it's also like The Sopranos, which to me is the ultimate like episode where each one feels like a movie. I just can't imagine coming back for more. I'm a terrible binger because I watch so much that when I, for instance, was watching Succession, Ozark, Pose, and Schitt's Creek to catch up before the Emmys, I watched them in that order, one episode at a time, instead of watching just one show and going through it. So I was still a couple days apart for each one, which, Chris, you seem to be frustrated by that.
Oh, no, not frustrated. I was just like, oh, wow, that's got to give you a lot of whiplash between those shows.
It's a lot, but I mean, part of why I like the episode submissions is it's a chance to see, as you guys said with that episode of Better Call Saul, to see what people are really talking about and see what this work is. And I think that can be a negative, especially, I keep mentioning Orphan Black. No one knows what's going on in that show if they're just watching one episode. It's completely impossible to understand. And I think Better Call Saul, because it's so narrative based, I think that's one thing that could be playing into that. I don't think it's going to win anything big. I do hope Bob Odenkirk wins, but again, I don't even know when shows are coming back anymore. Like, I have no idea what's going to be coming back for another season, what's happening now. All I know is The Crown's coming back in November, but that also has so many seasons left, and it really underperformed this year where it should have done so well. And that to me is my top drama series of the year, because so many episodes, like Margaretology and Moondust, just really blew me away. And so it's just hard to know when it's gonna be, because I also didn't think I didn't believe Succession was gonna do so well after it really underperformed so much last year with the Emmys, and then SAG doesn't do anything, but here we are. And so the question is, there are a lot of categories, but are we in for a relatively boring, if pleasing to some, sweep by Succession, Schitt's Creek, and Watchmen on Sunday, or is there going to be any variety to what we're seeing?
I don't think Succession and I don't think Succession is gonna sweep. I don't have it in directing. I am so doubtful if it would win actor, supporting actor as well, supporting actress. So for now, I have it in series and writing. Succession. The thing with Succession is that, in as much, even if I'm detached with rich white a-holes, the cast is so good, and that could be a problem when it comes to the Emmys when they share categories, because when, for example, Game of Thrones, Peter Dinklage continued to conquer internal competition because I haven't seen it, but I know that he is the supporting actor from that show. With Succession, you have fans of Brian Cox and his Bore on the Floor, and you also have fans of Jeremy Strong and his quieter work that just does a mic drop at the end of the season. And then with supporting actor, all of those three actors, Kieran Culkin, Matthew McFadden, and Nicholas Braun, have their own fans, and it's just, as someone who has been heartbroken by Yvonne Strahovski's loss in season 2 of The Handmaid's Tale, internal competition can be tough, and Succession, I think, has that. Same thing with I'm going to say Mad Men, Watchmen, supporting actor. Yaya is the big supporting actor contender, but also Louis Gossett Jr. is a legend, and Giovanna Depp is probably like in the highlight episode, the nostalgia episode. So I don't know how that's gonna pan out. And then the directing has 3. So I'm actually predicting unorthodox in directing in limited series, just because directing, even Game of Thrones, it couldn't win directing when it has 3. Well, I don't know the other earlier seasons, but last year, when it had those final season things. But yeah, I just feel like unless there is a big standout, the only standout, internal competition is going to happen. But I don't know with Watchmen, because I think Watchmen dwarfs the other limited series contenders. So I don't know if even if they had internal competition, if it would still work for them. But I don't know.
Yeah, Carlos, I completely agree with you on internal competition. I think there's a fine line, and like certain shows like Desperate Housewives and Modern Family, I think did a very good job of using, I think the advantage of having a lot of people from the same show in a category is you get more screen time for all of these characters. And so sometimes people could submit strategically where you kind of stack one person and they win. Obviously, Succession did not do that with Nicholas Braun and Matthew McFadden submitting the same episode, which is
the wrong episode for both of them, just to be clear.
What?
The wrong episode for both of them.
I did actually really like it.
Are you gonna pick the Panic Room episode?
Yes.
The episode's really good. But it at least made somewhat sense for McFadden. Like there's no reason for Nicholas Braun to pick that one, which is maddening to me. But no, I think I love Succession. I have it in series and in writing, and I do have it for actor. I think Brian Cox is great in both episodes. I think Jeremy Strong is great in one episode and not as in it as much in the other, and I think that kind of pushes him over. But Ozark has grown tremendously as well, season over season. It had the big win for Julia Garner last year. I have it in directing. I think that they both are, and I think Laura Linney could win for actress. So I think they're both going to be racking up these prizes heading into drama series. And I think it is anyone's game for the top prize between those two. Schitt's Creek, I think, is going to do very well throughout. I will say, and this might be blasphemous, and just so everyone knows, I do really love Schitt's Creek. This is not meant to be a knock on it. I don't know what Catherine O'Hara was thinking, but that was one of the more disappointing submissions. I know they don't always matter, and she's a legend, and she's one of my favorite actresses, and she will get a lot of goodwill votes. But for her kind of face planting on that when she had a lot of great stuff, and you have Issa Rae and Christina Applegate doing incredible submissions, and Insecure, both of those getting into comedy series, but Insecure really getting a lot of nominations. I think she rested on her laurels a bit too much. I think Watchmen is going to do very well, but I also, in rewatching all of them, I thought Yawa was going to win, and then I watched them all. I was like, oh, if I were voting, I'd vote for Giovanna Depo. So, you never know.
I think the Emmys are always good for a surprise. Even when a ceremony seems very boring, there is usually one very odd win somewhere. Even last year when Jason Bateman won directing, I don't remember people predicting that. And it was very unexpected. And I've previously mentioned 2010, Mad Men. Mad Men managed to win Best Drama Series with only an hairstyling win. Not writing, not directing, none of its actors. So I think the Emmys are more unpredictable than people give them credit for.
Hairstyling does make a great series, though.
So yeah, I think we'll see some surprises. I've never been completely bored throughout an Emmy show, even when they have near sweeps.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's crazy that Mad Men never won an acting Emmy until John Hamm won that's insane, until he won for the last season. But I do remember going into last year and feeling like Game of Thrones was going to win everything, and then it really didn't. It was like almost a disappointment when it won Best Drama Series, because it seemed like maybe it wasn't going to at that point. But I actually, Chris, I disagree, and I think Jeremy Strong is going to win Best Actor, because I think he really, it's such a difference in the two episodes, his performance. And to me, I think that shows a lot of range. And it also wowed me in a way that Succession usually doesn't, which I know I'm not supposed to say these things out loud, but that's true. I think Sarah Snook is going to win, but I'm not at all confident about that prediction. And I'm betting on Billy Crudup for supporting actor, but it could be any of them except Nicholas Braun, even though I was shocked when I predicted supporting actor, and Nathaniel and other people were like, Nicholas Braun is amazing, and were not happy with my dismissal of his inclusion. But I'm also predicting Homeland to win Best Directing, which is probably doesn't make any sense, but why not? And I think Succession will win Drama Series and Writing. I think Schitt's Creek is going to win everything except for supporting actress, and honestly, she could win too. I would love to see something different, but I just don't know at this point. Even Mrs. Maisel, which has won a lot before, I think is still deserving of almost all of its nominations if it won. And in limited series, I am predicting Unorthodox for actress and writing. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I am going with Yaya, but I just don't know if that's. I'm also saying Paul Mescal is going to beat Mark Ruffalo and Hugh Jackman, so I'm being a little that and predicting Zendaya for Best Actress. Those are like my reaches, because I think I'm an overreacher. I am an optimist, and as a result, not a realist when it comes to some chances. Because I mean, honestly, Best Actress, is it Laura Linney? Is it Jennifer Aniston? Is it Olivia Colman? There's no like one clear frontrunner. You could say it's Laura Linney because Ozark is going so strong, but she wasn't even nominated for season 1. Julia Garner won last year, and Jason Bateman won last year for directing. I don't know that it's her turn, but I think I'm less confident about a lot of my predictions this year, except all of Schitt's Creek's wins, which is disappointing to me. I've resigned myself to it. I wish I liked it more. I don't dislike it, but you know, I'm just not even sure. I mean, and one thing we sort of touched on a little before, but didn't really go into, Joe G had asked, which shows do we think have much more buzz among critics and TV watchers than they do that just doesn't really translate to the Academy?
Mindhunter?
I had that written down.
Sure.
Bam! Mic drop.
I don't read a lot of reviews for TV. In that regard, I'm more of a movie person. But yeah, looking at my timeline on social networks, Mindhunter seems to be much more talked about than what eventually is reflected at the Emmys. And also, this is probably just my timeline, but The Good Fight.
I was going to say that. No, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. I think The Good Fight is very much, I mean, it's weird because because it spun off from an Emmy-friendly show. And the fact that it took a lot of the actors, and I just don't understand. I don't love it. I actually don't watch. I watched The Good Wife all the way through, and then The Good Fight I sort of gave up on pretty early. I'm sorry about that. But I don't understand why the Emmy enthusiasm, especially when there are big names, and it's not as if the categories are that crowded and locked with people. There's still room for all the Killing Eve performers who, that's a show, I think that's the reverse, that people aren't talking about it, but all of a sudden last year with all the nominations, and then this year again, I thought for a second, I was like, oh, maybe Sandra Oh will get in, and that's like a big shock prediction, but then she did, and it leaves out so many people like Elizabeth Moss, and it's strange to me. I don't know why it doesn't always translate, especially when something like The Good Fight does do well with other TV awards. And I think Mindhunter did also for its first season get a little bit from some other groups. But it's just strange. And I mean, honestly, another thing that we can talk about is shows that historically haven't done well with the Emmys, but we would have liked to see. And for me, the biggest recent example is Counterpart, which was on Stars, but had J.K. Simmons, who is incredible and an Oscar winner. And just, to me, that was one show, and I wrote an FYC for it, I think last year for the film experience, hoping like somebody would read it and figure it out, but nothing. And I just don't understand that. And I think The Wire is the best classic example of that, a show that people were just waiting for years and years. But are there other shows that you can't believe never got the Emmy attention they should have?
Sorry, I'm trying to rack my brain. But it is interesting. Like, I think Fleabag and Schitt's Creek especially kind of showed sometimes there's an aha moment, that aha moment being that they went to streaming and people could catch up on it, where people finally discover a show. And so, yeah, I mean, some of these ones that get overlooked maybe next year after people have been quarantined will finally watched. I mean, it got a lot of nominations, but I'm really sad that 6 Feet Under never like went on a winning spree.
And that season 5 wasn't nominated, which makes no sense. Season 5 was incredible.
It's just such a good show, and I think it got drowned out by other prestige HBO dramas, even though I love The Sopranos. But I wish there just could have been one year where it just like broke through and won everything.
I think Rami is gonna explode next season.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe The Great. I don't know what's gonna happen with The Great, because it got directing and writing, and Claudia, we talked about this, but for it to not get costumes or production design, which is weird in my opinion. But I don't know with The Great. I'm pretty sure Rami, especially, I predicted the Mia Khalifa episode to get it in directing. I'm so proud of that. That's because I read an episode submission, like, have you clicked on me, like, okay, that's gonna get nominated, and I've seen it. It's such a delicately directed episode, and with Rami Youssef and Mahershala Ali, I feel like the next time Rami comes back, it's gonna get series writing, and also maybe Hiam Abbas. She was terrific in this season, especially with her own episode, and with that monologue, that speech with I'm not gonna curse, but when he's looking at this photo of this abomination and he just like celebrated his citizenship, which is, I don't know. I think the first 2 seasons are promising for Rami's prospects in the 3rd season.
Looking back in Emmy history, I can think of 2 examples that I was very disappointed by. One of them is Enlightened, which I think a lot of people shared that disappointment.
In season 2 especially. Oh man, so good.
Yeah. For me, season 2 would have swept, and I'm not someone who's usually in favor of sweeps because I like to spread the wealth, but I just loved it so much. And also Broadchurch. I remember that year I watched it and I loved it, and even going to research the Emmy ballots to see if it was eligible, and it was, but nothing came of it. And especially now that people seem to be paying more attention to Olivia Colman's work, I like to point them out to that, because, if you've seen her since then, she's such an amazing actress. Unlike what a lot of the film experience commenters like to say. Sorry.
Yeah, she does get a lot of hate from readers. We're not entirely sure why. I For me, honestly, the show that I cannot understand why the entire ensemble is not nominated every year is Shameless. William H. Macy is very good, but he's not the best one on that show at any point. I mean, Emmy Rossum, definitely Jeremy Allen White, and all of the kids who they started, they were so young, and now they're still great actors, still doing great stuff. And 10 seasons in, it's still just as good as it ever was. And you can't say that about a lot of shows. And I think part of it was the category confusion, that it was comedy then drama, because I would also say Orange is the New Black. I literally just finished it like 2 days ago. I didn't watch season 7, and then I watched all of it because of Laverne Cox's nomination.
Mhm.
But that's a show that I didn't love season 6, and there's some stuff in it, but like that also stayed good. And that's my Emmy pet peeve, is when shows get better over time or stay just as good. 6 Feet Under is a great example. The Shield, season 7 of The Shield is just as good as season 1. And the fact that The Shield, it won Best Actor, but never really got anything else besides a little Glenn Close and CCH Pounder later on. It frustrates me. And the best example actually is the show Damages, which I never loved. But I didn't like season 1. Season 2 was a little better. Season 3 was even better. And 4 and 5 were pretty good. But like by that point, nobody was paying attention. And it's the reverse for me, that if a show gets better, I would love to see it finally get acclaim. But then when suddenly no one's paying attention. And that also happened with Justified, where I was like, especially after The Shield, the fact that Walton Goggins got nominated for season 2 of Justified, and then Neil McDonough, who's probably one of the best actors out there, who does such great TV work, even on like Arrowverse shows. He's incredible. And he was so good in Justified, and it had just won awards the year before, and then nothing, because all of a sudden no one's watching anymore. And that's just disappointing to me, because I wrote a piece for the Film Experience last summer about underrated ignored players in shows Emmys love, like Timothy Simons on Veep should have won last year, and that would have been really great to have him there. And it frustrates me and Better Call Saul is a great example too every year. So that you can watch all these and then just not show up, not show up for the people who are really, really fantastic. And so I wanna ask us. Go ahead, Carlos.
No, I would say I manifest my love for Jonad, and I still watch his episode in the Senate hearings, but he's given all these names. But Better Things and Glow, they continue to get better, but they got lesser Emmy love. Just sad.
It really is like when the Emmys stop watching, they stop watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I fear the same fate with The Handmaid's Tale.
But that is even truer with the Golden Globes, which made it so strange that John Hamm won a Golden Globe at the end of the run. But that also might have been because his first win was during the writer's strike, so wasn't able to accept in person. But I would say, so as I'm disappearing from view here because it's getting darker, and as we're wrapping up, what is one win that will not happen on Sunday night, but would make you very happy if it did?
Wouldn't happen?
One win that it couldn't happen. It's not going to happen. Statistically, it's improbable, impossible. But what would make you so happy?
Oh gosh. Can I give the one that like could happen, but is a long shot that I wish?
Please.
Because I think, as you predicted, I think Zendaya gave the best submission of all of the acting submissions this year. I thought she was absolutely phenomenal. I hope and pray that she's in an episode where you narrate the do's and don'ts of dick pics will get you an Emmy. We can hope, we can pray. But I'm not predicting yet, but I do think she has a shot, so I'll try and find a different answer.
Unbelievable and limited series. And then Normal People and Everything. Mescal is my predicted winner in actor, but the rest are just surprise nominations. And
Kaya, anything?
Just because of all the underappreciation that's been going on in this conversation, I'll say Nicholas Brown for Succession. I think it's a really good performance, despite what people say.
Us.
You, yeah. It's a true supporting performance, especially one that's usually doing very minute things at the edges of scenes. And I actually think that submission is very intelligent, maybe not to win, but from a performance standpoint, because eavesdropping with his silent reactions, eavesdropping clues to the fact that he's going to give another character some important documents later on. And you can see that in his silent reactions all throughout that episode. And while not distracting from the comedic relief that his character usually is, this pathetic creature, but yeah, I think it's an incredibly intelligent performance that people tend to sometimes to undervalue because the role isn't showy or verbose, but I think it's a true supporting turn, and I think people should give value to that. Because especially at the Emmys, so many times you see a supporting actor winning for an episode where they are leads, where the narrative suddenly gives them all the time. So I really appreciate a supporting actor performance that's truly a supporting actor's performance, even within the context of their episode. So yeah, Nicholas Brown.
I think that's a good point. I like that. I think that it is, that's why where we talk about we all want more categories, that to be able to really recognize supporting performances and to distinguish recurring, et cetera. I think that is important. For me, it's definitely Linda Cardellini in Dead to Me. I thought she was the MVP of season 1. I actually considered her supporting, I realized last year, and then now I really do think that she is lead. But her episode, to me, I think she submitted perfectly, and she just, she really stood out to me in every episode this season. And I think that there's no way Christina Applegate's winning, but there's even less of a chance that she would win. And so even for season 3, which will be the final season. So, but I'm not hoping for it. I just think she's great, and I'm glad that she's nominated at least. So I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight. It's really enjoyable to talk about this kind of thing with people who actually are interested in it, because I find myself talking to everybody in my life about this, even if they're not as enthralled as I am. But thank you all for coming on, and I hope everyone will visit thefilmexperience.net to read more about the Emmys, and of course those movie awards that are eventually coming up around the corner, and plenty of other analysis. So thanks again, guys. It's great to see you in person after reading all of your stuff.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. It's great.
Bye.